Hey, welcome. So today we are jumping into one of the biggest, most fascinating puzzles in all of biology. Why in the world does sex even exist? Seriously, when you look at it, it seems like a whole lot of unnecessary work. So let's get into it and see if we can solve this evolutionary mystery together. First up, we have to talk about something called the paradox of sex. And it's a paradox because, from a purely practical point of view, sexual reproduction looks like a terrible strategy for making more of yourself. It just seems so inefficient. And that really gets us to the heart of the matter. Just think about it. If you're an organism and you're doing great, you're perfectly suited to your environment, why wouldn't you just make perfect copies of yourself? Why would you go through all the trouble and the risk of finding a mate? It seems kind of backwards, right? Okay, this chart really spells it out. Look at the column for asexual reproduction. It's a dream. One parent, it's super fast, and every single member of the population can pop out offspring. Now look at sexual reproduction. You need two parents, which takes time and energy to find. It's slower, and this is a big one. Only about half the population, the females, actually produce the offspring. An asexual population should totally outcompete a sexual one, growing twice as fast. So what gives? Well, with all those downsides, there has to be some enormous, game-changing advantage to sex. And yep, there absolutely is. It's an advantage so powerful, it makes all that extra effort worthwhile. And here it is. The whole reason, the grand prize, is genetic variation. It's as simple as that. While making a clone is like hitting the copy button over and over, sexual reproduction is like shuffling a deck of cards every single time. It creates totally unique individuals in every generation. And that changes everything. So how does this genetic shuffling actually happen? Well, mutation is the ultimate source of new traits for everyone, but sex is the master of mixing things up in three amazing ways. First, during meiosis, that's the special cell division for making sex cells, you get crossover. This is where chromosomes literally hug and swap pieces with each other. Then there's random assortment, where all these newly mixed up chromosomes line up in a completely random order. And finally, you have random fertilization, where 1 in a million sperm meets a 1 in a million egg. The possibilities are staggering. But you might still be asking, why is all this variety so important? Especially if the environment isn't changing. To answer that, we have to talk about something called the Red Queen's race, which is a concept that comes straight from a kid's book, believe it or not. So the Red Queen hypothesis basically says that evolution isn't just about getting better. It's a nonstop, relentless arms race. Predators are always evolving to be sneakier, prey are evolving to be faster, and parasites, the parasites are constantly inventing new ways to break through a host's defenses. Everything is evolving together, all the time. And this is the line that started it all, from Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass. The Red Queen tells Alice that where she's from, you have to run as fast as you can just to stay in the same spot. And that is a perfect metaphor for what life is like for most species on Earth. And this is where it all clicks into place. That genetic variation we were talking about, that's the fuel for the run. Think about it. An army of identical clones is a super easy target. If one parasite or one disease figures out the secret to beating them, it's game over for everybody. But a genetically diverse population, well, odds are that some individuals will just happen to have the right genetic combo to survive the new threat, allowing the species to keep on running in the race. All right, so we figured out why sex is such a winning strategy. Now let's switch gears and look at the how. It turns out there are three main blueprints that multicellular life uses to pull this off. First up is the diploid-dominant life cycle. And this one should feel pretty familiar because, well, it's us. Diploid just means that most of your cells have two sets of chromosomes, one set from mom, one from dad. The big, complex organism that you actually see walking around is the diploid stage. The only time cells are haploid with just one set of chromosomes is when they're gametes, sperm and eggs. And the process is pretty straightforward, right? A diploid adult undergoes meiosis to make those haploid gametes. Then fertilization happens, and two gametes join up to form a brand new diploid cell called a zygote. And from there, that single zygote just divides and divides through mitosis to grow into a new adult. And yep, like we said, this is the playbook for pretty much all animals, from us to dogs to fish to insects. Now, let's look at the complete opposite of that, the haploid-dominant life cycle. In this strategy, the main organism you'd see, the main body, is actually made of haploid cells. The diploid stage is super short-lived, lasting only as long as it's a single cell. See how this totally flips things around? The haploid adult makes special cells that can fuse together, forming that diploid zygote. But then, bam, the zygote immediately goes through meiosis to create new haploid cells called spores. And it's those spores that grow up to be the next generation of haploid adults. This is the life strategy for most fungi. So think mushrooms and molds, and also for quite a few types of algae. Okay, our third and final blueprint is maybe the wildest of them all. It's called alternation of generations, and it's this amazing mix of the other two. Organisms that do this actually have two completely separate multicellular bodies in their life cycle, one that's diploid and one that's haploid. All right, let's trace this out because it's cool. You start with the diploid multicellular organism called a sporophyte. Its job is to make spores using meiosis. Those haploid spores then float off and grow into a totally new, separate, multicellular haploid organism called a gametophyte. And its job is to make gametes. Those gametes then find each other, fertilization happens, and the new diploid zygote grows back into the big sporophyte. It's a full circle. In this incredible cycle, it's the universal strategy for every single plant on Earth, from the tiniest moss to the biggest sequoia tree, plus some other types of algae. So let's just put it all side by side real quick. With us animals, we're diploid-dominant, and our meiosis makes gametes. With fungi, they're haploid-dominant, and their meiosis makes spores. And with plants, doing their amazing alternating thing, they have both a multicellular diploid and haploid stage, and their meiosis also makes spores. See the patterns? So, after going through all these different life cycles, what's the big picture here? What's the common thread that makes this whole sex thing evolution's #1 strategy? You know, it really boils down to just a few core ideas. It doesn't matter if you're a person, a mushroom, or a pine tree. Every sexual life cycle is built on this beautiful dance between meiosis, which cuts the chromosome number in half, and fertilization, which brings it back to the full number. And most importantly, those incredible engines of variation, crossover and random assortment, are humming along in every single one of them, constantly churning out new combinations for evolution to work with. So in the end, we find out that sex isn't some weird, inefficient biological quirk. It's a feature. It is life's ultimate insurance policy in a world that never, ever stops changing, which kind of leaves us with one last big question to chew on. In our own world of constant change, with a shifting climate and new diseases, what does this deep biological need for variation tell us about the future of life on this planet, and maybe even about our own survival?